Alrighty. It's Saturday afternoon. My goodness. Week is finally coming to an end. I tell you, I've had a week full of Mondays. But it's glad to be here. I'm glad to be here with you. I'm Super Pac. Welcome to my channel here on Twitch. And today's big topic is arcade versus console. Okay, so what this is, we take a game from the arcade days and we pretty much stack up their home versions up to it to see, how good are they? Do they really capture the spirit? Are they worth buying? And we have actually a pair of games because they're virtually the same game. And let me get in here real quickly. Hi, how you doing? I am Super Pac, like I said. Today we have a pair of games, virtually the same game. In fact, they were both released within the same year. And the game that we're talking about today particularly is Defender. Now, Defender is a great little title created by the folks over at Williams, headed by Eugene Jarvis. He was a pinball designer and sound engineer. And, well, they wanted to get into the arcade game business because they were up and coming. They were creating coin shortages overseas, so hey, why not? And so they came up with this little title here called Defender. And it was first shown at the AMOA in 1980, and, well, it wasn't quite well received. It was a little tough, you see. Even the game designer was like, yeah, we're not going to get past wave 3, so we only put 5 waves to it. So let's take a look at the cabinet here. This is what this wonderful cabinet looked like, and as you can see, it has a lot of buttons. Boy, does it have a lot of buttons. It has more buttons than a clothing factory. A nice big old screen. Wonderful cabinet, I will say this. This is one of my favorite pictures that I saw online. A whole row of Defenders. Could you imagine what they're worth today if they're all still intact? And what's nice about this is that they still make a Defender to this, today, thanks to Arcade 1-Up. 40th anniversary, which was last year, I think. No, 2 years ago? One of those years. 1981, when the game officially premiered. You can still find the game out there for playable today. In fact, only Pac-Man at the time had a bigger gross in arcades, sold more units. And the funny part is that they both also premiered in the CES in 1980, and they weren't well received. The big game of that particular event was Rally X from Namco. Bet you played Rally X before and enjoyed many, many hours in front of it. No. Neither did I. In fact, the first time I learned of Rally X was at the Namco Museum. It was released back in 1995 for PlayStation. Hey, there you go. So, what can I tell you? Talking about the control scheme of things, we have a big old joystick that only goes up and down, as you can see. In fact, let me turn off my camera real quickly. And you have a big old reverse button. You have a hyperspace button. This is my favorite button of the actual game because you hit that, good luck. You might wind up safely. You might wind up in the middle of a ship. You could explode at random. That's the beauty of the hyperspace button. Of course, you had your smart bomb. That was really neat because it eliminated all enemies on the screen all at once. And instead of using a joystick over here, and instead of putting a thrust button next to the reverse button, no, they had to put it all the way over here next to the fire button. And that's so you can reverse, so you can move forward. And of course, reverse means you just simply reverse course. Yeah, so when they made that for the 2600, imagine throwing all of those controls into one tiny little joystick and one thumb button. Yes, absolutely. Not happening. Hello, London Lass. How are you doing today? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Come on, join the conversation. If you're watching, please come on in. Make yourself at home. I'm going to just play a little bit of Defender. And we're going to play its sequel as well. I'll get to that in just a second. And they actually did make a cocktail table version of this. Much to my surprise. Most cocktail tables you usually play on the short ends there, but no, this one, because it's a horizontal screen, you get to play it in the long ends there. And you still have all 7 controls there. Interesting. And of course, because they made pinball tables, in fact, they were well known and established for making pinball tables for decades before this particular point. Lo and behold, Eugene Jarvis also helped make the pinball table of this as well. The skill, the challenge, the excitement, the pinball. And I have to admit, I've played the pinball of this particular game, Defender. And I'll say this, that the pinball table is actually easier than the video game. Who'd have thunk? But there it is, the fact in all of its glory. if you can find one, I know there's some pinball museums all scattered throughout the United States, various large and even small cities, but if you happen to find one, by all means, play it. Really good table. Now, this I don't understand. This was a big thing. I know that Pac-Man had a board game, and Donkey Kong had a board game. Of course, Milton Bradley made board games of every friggin' thing out there. Game shows, and of course, original games, Chutes and Ladders, Candyland, all that. The family version of the arcade game, if you take a look at it, it's almost like a chessboard. It kind of reminds me of playing chess, but no. And I love the description here. It says, your defender ships are ready to face the oncoming aliens. Spin the spinner to determine your move. But of course, can't play. Always crash to the mountain. Silver Ball, New Jersey, and Florida. Yes, those in particular. The Silver Ball arcade in New Jersey and in Florida. I believe Florida's Delray Beach. They have a massive assortment of pinball tables and original arcade games. Some of them are actually some of the new party games, like the Pac-Man Party Arcade, which is fairly new, was introduced within the last 15 years or so. But damn it, they also had a Q*bert, they had a Donkey Kong. Man, Space Invaders, we're not talking about the recreation, we're talking about restored arcade titles. Really, really cool. Thanks for pointing out that, London Last. Appreciate it. One of the humanoids has been kidnapped. Can you save him to win 3 points? How specific? And you destroy your opponent's last defender ship, and the battle is over. Highest score wins the game, and you get to look forward to playing that. Now, it's a minimum of 2 players, and again, it's like playing chess by yourself. Not really worth it. But essentially, it's a glorified chess game with a spinner and some cards. Yeah, okay. And recently, back in 2019, much to my absolute delight. In fact, the year before that, they put out Donkey Kong, and then 2019, they put out Defender. Oh my goodness, it looks just like the actual thing. It was wonderful. I'm very happy about that. In fact, I have one there with the Donkey Kong, with the Joust, with the Galaga, and with the Pac-Man, all the keepsake ornaments that they've made over those years. And there it is on somebody's tree with Mario, and looks like some other Super Mario ornament there on the other side of it. That's for your ultimate geek, for your ultimate nerd Christmas tree, and I absolutely love it. And I do proclaim to be a geek. I only worked with their squad for 5 years. Absolutely. And what I like about this also, they still make, like I said, the arcade 1-up, they make a tabletop version of it too, which is fantastic, a countertop. And they're not cheap. They're built to be played. And if you want to go cheap, well, you can buy this little thing from Arcade Classics. They still celebrate Defender to this very, very day. Now, the beauty of it here is that they made a sequel to this game the very same year, and it's called Stargate. And Stargate, we had a geeky tree. Yeah, you did? Excellent. You know, it's funny. I've seen so many pop culture ornaments over the years, and Hallmark has been excellent at putting them out. And they put out, video games, like even the consoles, like the Super Nintendo, and of course Super Mario, and all other kinds of things, Disney stuff, and Charlie Brown stuff, and all that. And why not? Why not? We're kids in adult bodies now, so hell, run with it. So they made a hard game called Defender. So after some criticism, you made this game too hard, it's too complex, you got people racking their brains, and so they said, okay, so we'll make this Defender Stargate. Stargate is just a tad worse. As far as difficulty, it is a harder game. They throw a whole multitude of enemies at you, including the ones from Defender. There's one of the little promotional things from it, from Atari. And much to my amazement, they made not one, but 2 cocktail tables. One with a base, so, I guess you can stand up and play it for whatever reason. Of course, the one to sit down. And once again, you have more buttons than a clothing factory on its particular control panel. And they even sold conversion kits, so if you had a Defender, for whatever reason you want to convert it to a Stargate, by all means, there it is. They gave you the side vinyls and everything. Not sure why you wouldn't want to do that, but there's the original cabinet right there. And it's fairly unassuming, I have to admit. But there's your controls. Once again, you have an up-down joystick. You have a reverse, a hyperspace. You have a new button there called Inviso. That makes you invisible, but also invulnerable for a short amount of time until you actually run out on the meter. And, of course, you have your dreaded smart bomb thrust and fire, just like you did in the original game. And, once again, they make a countertop of that as well. Now, they later renamed it to Defender 2, not necessarily for copyright reasons, but more for trademark reasons, so they can still trademark the game. Stargate, well, that's a scientific term of sorts, I guess. But whatever reason, Defender, Stargate, Defender 2, In fact, I've never seen it as an arcade game as Defender 2, unless you count the more recent mock-ups where they kind of rebranded and made some newer versions of it, and they included both games. And today's home games that we're going to be looking at, the consoles, we're going to look at Defender from Atari 2600. This was one of the most sold video games of 1982. Only Pac-Man actually outsold it. Unfortunately, it was also one of the most returned games of 1983, along with Pac-Man, E.T., and just about every other Atari game, it seemed. This is unfortunately one of the titles that was indeed found crushed in that particular, pit found in the desert out in California. But look at its 5200 counterpart. And then they, believe it or not, made it for the ColecoVision. And we're going to see how these three stood up to the Defender title. And then for Stargate, well, there wasn't too many home versions. There was the Atari 2600 version, which was released in the mid-1980s. There was a prototype but never released 5200. We'll take a look at that anyway. And Defender 2 was retitled for the 2600. And then HAI, or HAL America Incorporated, released Defender 2 for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Figure that one out. It's old enough to actually have the old seal to it as well. And those are the titles that we'll be looking at today. So, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and switch up, turn on the old emulator, and just for my selfish pleasure, we're going to use the Williams Arcade's greatest hit for the Sega Genesis as the arcade version, because I only have so many buttons on the controller versus everything that they have, and I don't want to use the reverse button or the thrust button. I'd just rather use the old thumbstick. Let's get to it, absolutely. To see my Godzilla. I take it, well, Geeky Tree had a Godzilla ornament, I take it. I've seen those. Nothing screams Christmas like Godzilla. And I find it fascinating that Godzilla actually has penetrated American pop culture as it has, considering they just recently, Stern Electronics, I think last year or the year before, made a Godzilla table. And the only other table that existed was, and it screamed. I can imagine with all the doodads that they've done with ornaments these days. You know, you hit the button, they light up, they even animate sometimes, they move. I can see that. They made Sega made a 1999 Godzilla table that premiered with the movie. And in my opinion, that was really the only thing good about that particular Godzilla license was the Sega pinball table. It was actually quite excellent. Because honestly, I didn't really like the movie at all. But, that's me. Also, want to do a thank you to my new followers. That would be NerdDad TPC. Thank you very much. In fact, we were talking while you were playing Final Fantasy IX, talking shop a bit. We discovered that we had a couple things in common there as far as what we used to do before Twitch and what we're doing now. Agent Rusty Wubba, thank you for following. And Angry Blueberry, thank you for following. I greatly appreciate it. If you like what you see out there and you happen to be watching me right now, give me a follow too. I greatly would appreciate it. Of course, if you happen to catch the VOD afterwards, you can follow me then as well. Like I said, we're going to go ahead and switch up things in just a second. I'm going to hit pause. Turn on the emulator. We'll be right back. Okie doke. Let's take a look at what we have right now. And there it is, Defender. Arguably one of the hardest games out there, especially in the early days of video gaming. I love how the attract mode of this thing. Neat little story about that before we actually get started with the game. The attract mode was actually hastily created because they discovered they didn't have one. They didn't have any title screen whatsoever. You just put a quarter in, and you hit start, and that was the game. And they programmed 5 waves into it, figuring that nobody would actually, get far in the game. After all, it was a trade show. Good thing, however, they pulled the game aside and said, "Oh God, we got to put in a doohickey in there," and they did. And they actually put out a very simple title mode, and it's very effective. It shows the Defender ship hitting the aliens and literally what their scores are. And I thought that was fantastic. This is one of my favorite games. It's also, like I said, I'm going to play for a little bit. I'm not going to do really anything big with it, so I'm going to essentially suck, as we say. But I just want to show you the essentials of the game. Basically, you have to shoot those things that you see on the screen. That is the lander, and he will pick up the humanoid, and you rescue the humanoid and deposit it back to the Earth. And you'll run into landers, and you'll run into bombers or mutants. Mutants is what happens when the humanoids turn into with the landers at the top of the screen. The baiters, if you wait too long. The bombers, which just diagonally fly around the ship. The pods, which burst into clusters. And that the swarmers. If you wait too long, like I said, baiters will start coming at you rather rapidly and just make your life a living hell. So, having said that, let's go ahead and get started, shall we? I shall go ahead and hit start, and we shall begin. See what the game options are, just out of curiosity. Shifts to start? Yeah, let's make it easy. What the hell? What the hell? 5 waves per planet. They originally made it 5, and it just simply resets itself simply because of the fact that nobody would actually thought they could, do well. I love that sound. I've always loved the sound of Williams games. They had, again, Eugene Jarvis was one of the sound engineers. Oh, come on. I love how you just literally take forever. Where are you? That's simple. Somebody got converted. I see the mutant there on the other side of the Earth. Fantastic. I get to deal with that in just a second. He'll be coming over here. I just got rid of him. So I lost a humanoid. That's 100 points minus on my bonus. There's a swarmer. I just all of a sudden forgot about him. There are bombers coming up. Oh. Really? If you happen to lose all the humanoids on this thing, the whole planet explodes. You're dealing with nothing but mutants from here on in until a 5th wave or 10th wave or whatever like that. Oh my goodness, yes. Let's shoot the humanoids too, shall I? Just as simple as that. And that's with the easier controls. In 1982, Columbia Records released Pac-Man Fever as an album, and one of the songs in that particular thing was indeed Defender. And it's that popular. I can't believe we got a board game though. That's new. I did not see that before. And in a way, I kind of wish I hadn't seen that at all. But it's gaming. After all, they made Pac-Man, Chef Boyardee pasta, and Donkey Kong cereal. So why the hell not? And fortunately, I can be one of those kids who said, "Yeah, I had some." I indeed had Donkey Kong cereal. It was like oversized Captain Crunch. Oh, got one. Didn't even hear it. Yeah, you suck. notoriously hard game. The way the landers move is always something of an irritating thing, because they literally bob up and down, and they'll do everything they can to hit you or avoid your shots. And I've always found that fascinating as far as the control mechanism, the game mechanics. Like I said, the first wave is relatively easy. Of course, until you get shot like that. It was relatively easy as you played, but it got so exponentially harder. And this is kind of what they fear, that it would be a turn-off on people, but people like the challenge. And I think that's kind of where I mentioned Rally X before. Rally X was a relatively easy game. It was charming. It had a neat musical score if you played it. The original version, I should say. But no, while it did very well in the show, it didn't do well at all. The funny part is that you actually got to see some of the stuff that they had in the game go into later games, like the S flag that you find in Tekken. Look at that. Irritating. So, while it did okay, it wasn't what people were screaming for. You suck. We're going to play a couple more times. I will be okay on this. It was just really I love the sounds. I love the color, the intensity of everything changing colors as the game goes on. It's just one of those classic Williams games that have everything right. And yeah, while it was a tough game, it was a very tough game, you just kept on wanting to play it to get better at it. You wanted to show off to your buddies that, yeah, I can play this game. And while people memorizing patterns and Pac-Man and stuff like that, people were learning how to play this game. Yay. Great. Now, shut up. And I'll say this. Got one left. Oh, he wouldn't even let me catch it. That's right. Made a cool sound effect. Catch him. I'm shooting humanoids and getting blasted. Well, that was the last enemy, so I should get lost over half the humanoids. Wave 3. I ran out of smart bombs. Make it a little tough. There's all the swarmers. There I go and get blowed up. Blowed up real good. And there you go. What a challenging game. It was, like I said, a brilliant game. So, we're going to go right into Defender 2, or Stargate, as it were. Let's go ahead and move that right now. Well, we're going to go into another game of Defender, of course. So in 1994, the folks over Digital Eclipse actually emulated the Williams Arcade's greatest hits, or arcade classics, for got released on any console. And it was for the DOS. Anyone give me my bonus points? there's the baiter. Baiter happens if you take too long on a wave. I wish you hadn't. The baiters will come literally right at you and make your life hell. That's okay. It gets worse than Stargate. Baiters still exist, and then you got the other ships that come at you as well. All right. Like I said, let's go ahead and hit exit. Let's check out Defender 2. Now, Defender 2, or Stargate, has a much more splashier screen. It was one of 3 games developed by the Vids kids, with Eugene Jarvis in charge of that as well. I believe, I think Joust was one, and I think Sinistar was one. I'm not sure. But regardless, this was like an R&D version for Williams. There it is. Much more splashier screen, certainly more color intensive, flashier. And then you get to see a little bit of thing here. There's a Stargate flying it out, it'll take you to the other side of the Earth, or if a humanoid's in trouble from a lander, and then it'll take you to that. And if there's more than one being captured, as it happens, it'll take you to whichever one is closer to you. Those are fire bombers. They're a pain in the ass. There's the Yellowbin Space Guppy. I love the volcano there in the background. And they kind of swarm at you as well, and they even fire at you. And they're a pain in the ass. There's a Dynamo, which he just blew up because he landed there, I guess. And there they are, the Freds, the Big Reds, and the Munchies. Like the baiters, if you take too long, they're going to come after you. And boy, do they. And of course, the Mutant there, and the Pod, and the Swarmer, and the original Bomber, and of course, the baiter. Man. Lots of enemies, lots of things to shoot at you, lots of things to come and crash into you. But fortunately, you're given an extra little incentive called the Inviso, which will turn your ship invisible and invulnerable for as long as it lasts. And you want to use it wisely because it will reset after every 5 waves. But that's it. And of course, if you fly into the Stargate with 4 humanoids or more, it will advance you 3 more waves and make your life a living hell. So that's up to you if you wanted to do that. Let's get started. And we're going to mess around with the game options. And here we go. Start with the same sound. Starts the same way, virtually the same game. A little bit more sophisticated. A little bit harder. And that little thing next to my 900 points, that's the invisible. Notice I do not use the hyperspace. It is untrustworthy. It sucks. I'm just going to start smart bombing. What I have the tendency to do is hang around just above the humanoids per se. The humanoids do move, by the way. I think that's rather neat. There you go. How about that? Yay! Now watch it get just that much harder. I thought I hit the Invisome or the Smart Bomb, but no, I hit the damn hyperspace. Lucky me. That much harder. What's amazing about these games, they didn't have a whole lot of memory back in those days. Because it didn't happen. It didn't just simply happen those days. We're talking about 10K, 25K at most. And while it doesn't sound like a lot, the Atari cartridges themselves generally had 1 to 2K in them. I remember there was a big thing on Pitfall 2 made for the Atari by accident, and it celebrated the fact that it was a 10K version. Well, it had its own soundtrack and everything like that. So yeah, I gotta remember which one. It's the smart one. It's not that one. Have to get rid of the fire bombers. They will fire at me. There you go. Fantastic. And yeah, it was that much harder. It really was. I love how the Stargate kind of looks at you too. Play a couple more times. Look at something real fast. Let you map out. Nope, doesn't. Okay. Simply, I don't have the smart button. That's the smart bombs mapped out. Wonderful. Overrated anyway. They only destroy everything on the screen all at once. They make life that much easier. No, it's the visual button. Ran right into it. Always love the sounds too. Really? Just fired something and I went right into it. All landers are destroyed. That's a nice little thing. Because I have to get rid of the fire bomber. It can't take too long. Because if I do, then all the munchies and the Freds and all that kind of stuff, the landers start coming right at me. I'm surprised. That's the first time it happened. I've been telling you, the hyperspace is so unreliable. You get destroyed. First time it happened after, what, 10 tries? Eh. Well, I love also that one thing about this, the fire shot that you've had where you're... Aha. In the ass. All landers, nothing but fire bomber. Don't need that. Come on. Now the faders. And yeah, faders. You suck. That's a fire bomber. Yep. Yeah. Like I said, game mechanics, they'll do anything they can to avoid your line of fire. Oh, mighty fast this time. Let's shoot the humanoid, sure. Anyway, that is Defender, and that is Stargate. Or Defender 2, depending on the year that you play it, I guess. Like I said, I've never seen it in the arcades as Defender 2. I've always seen it as Stargate. My dad's friend Marty ran a video game shop back in the early 1980s, and this was back before the video game crash. And in his back room, he happened to have a Stargate, and I thought it was one of the most amazing pieces of hardware I've ever seen. And well, it's just one of those games that you just simply keep playing and get better and better, of course, at your own expense, as you lose a quarter for each time you do that. Marty was nice enough to actually put it to 5 lives and make it not so torturous, but yeah, it was a really good game. And they really put their own, put their style into it, made it what it is that we love about Williams games. And the other Williams games that I've always loved, like Robotron 2084, and there's a great history with that. I would love to do that for this particular segment. The only problem is, though, that there's only like 2 versions for the home consoles that I can think of off the top of my head, and they're both made by Atari. They made it for the Atari 5200 and the 7800. And that's it. It's just not a common title for the home player. And like Sinistar, I don't think it received the home version that I can think of off the top of my head. Joust certainly did. We did that last week. But it's kind of a shame. You kind of lost a little bit there. But thank goodness for emulators. And even this is the Sega Genesis emulator of the Williams Arcade's greatest hits. And even that machine was powerful enough to actually faithfully recreate the game as you would play it at home. And they did that back, almost 30 years ago. As a matter of fact, 29 years ago, the Williams Greatest Classics or Arcade Classics made it for DOS system, and it changed everything. And of course, MAME emulation came out, and we all play our favorite games out at home on our computers. I remember, who was this? This was Nerdad TPC. He was telling me he wanted to build his own MAME cabinet. And I actually have a friend who did, and he was smart enough to actually put the monitor on more or less a daisy wheel, which can actually then reorientate the monitor, so instead of being always horizontal or always vertical, you can switch it up, which I thought was fantastic. I have a multicade in my Ms. Pac-Man in the living room, but of course Ms. Pac-Man was a vertical-oriented game, so all the games in there are also vertical-oriented, so this game would never appear there. And there are far too few buttons on Ms. Pac-Man, only the start buttons and a joystick, so this game would never make it for that. But still, it's good to see that this kind of stuff still lives on to this day in some form. And they still make Williams' greatest hits in some form and fashion to this day. I believe today Williams is owned by Scientific Games Incorporated, and they're largely responsible for casino type games, if you will. Slot machines, electronic slots. And it's kind of a shame because they also took the license of their pinball tables that was for a long time with Farsight Studios, and they moved it to Zen Pinball. While they do a good job over at Zen, we had so many titles. They actually did Kickstarter funding for Star Trek Next Generation, which was a Williams table. They also did Bally tables as well, because they actually merged in the early 1990s, but they kept their separate brands. So the Addams Family, Doctor Who. Those tables don't have a home license to play anymore. If you bought them in the past, great, they're still yours. You can't find them today. We're going to switch things up. We're going to go to the Ataris in just a second. But first, I will hit pause, and I'll be right back. So I'll tell you a fun little story about this particular game here. This is Defender for the Atari 2600. And I wanted to buy the game. It just had come out, and so there was a store close by to me. It was one of those department stores. It was called Zayre, Z-A-Y-R-E. And it was about a mile from me. So I went there, bought the game, and lo and behold, I was excited, put in my Atari, and I got this gray screen with a high pitch, you know, like that. I think, oh crap, son of a bitch. I didn't say those words back then. I was just a kid, of course. So I showed it to my mom, and well, you spent your hard-earned money. Let's go ahead and take it back to Zayre, and let's see if we can get it switched out, okay? And we did, and we just, you know, back in those days, return policies were a lot more flexible. We didn't have a lot of people, you know, abuse it back in those days. And they were, okay, that's fine. You just want the same game again. I said, yep. Just give me another cartridge, and I'll be on my happy little way. And they did, and went home, put it in, got the same damn thing. And well, we'd go to the store tomorrow, the next day, and get it out there. And I'm, you know, this major disappointment. You buy a game you're looking forward to, play it in the arcades, and you come home, and even though it's the Atari 2600, it's their version of a game of your favorite game. And we took it in for a third time, and it happened again. And we went in the day after that, and the gal behind the counter said, we're really sorry, but it turns out all the games, something happened on their transport, and they're all defective. So we got our money back. And we went to another store and ultimately bought it, and, you know, we live happily ever after, you know, for what it's worth. But that kind of stuff happens, and of course, was it disappointing to play? We're going to find out here how disappointing it was or wasn't. As you can see here, similar aspects. You have a ship there, you have a city below with buildings as opposed to the mountains that you found earlier. You do have similar ships too. You have the pod, you have the lander, you have baiters, you have mutants. That's, of course, if the lander successfully gets the humanoid to the top of the screen and turn into a mutant. So, very similar gameplay, but the thing is, though, your Atari 2600, like I said, had one joystick and one button, as opposed to the consortium of buttons and joystick that you found on the control panel of the arcade game. So obviously it's going to lose something here. And the first thing I noticed when I started playing this was, of course, the sound. I think I made it a little too soft, so let me just go ahead and kill the music real quickly. Okay, the button is working, but the joystick is not. Okay. Was not expecting that. There we go. Okay, we got it fixed, so we'll start this again in a second. But like I said, if you notice that various things are the same, the landers look a little bit different, of course. One thing that was kind of a pet peeve in this thing is that your ship disappears when it fires, and they actually explained that in the game manual, that all the energy makes your ship invisible. Oh. Ah, good. The humanoid safely landed. So for the most part, the game, yeah, it's pretty much the same. Big difference here is that because of the hardware limitations, only one shot at a time is fired by the enemies. It does seem like whenever your laser beam from your ship it hits the enemy, it may or may not actually successfully destroy them. Kind of a iffy on that thing. Alright. See? gotta catch him. No, this is one thing I'm not too big on. I'm flying behind the ships, and the reason why buildings, because that's my smart bomb. I have to literally disappear out of sight to use it. So I'm not a big fan of that. But again, remember, you only have one stupid button on your controller, your joystick. So that's the way around that. You literally had to sneak behind the buildings and just get the hell out of there. Of course, you are 100% safe by doing that, so it's kind of a... There's a baiter, because I'm taking too long. And that last thing I had left was the bomber. How about that? Oh, he will not survive that. That should have caught him. Oh, well. That's my last life. So, when you play the game, you say, okay, this you can get around this. It's not too terrible. It's missing a lot of great sounds, but of course, you know, Williams excelled in the sound department with their games, certainly in their tables. Yeah, and I spent my hard-earned $30 getting this game, my Atari. Was it worth it? I'm going to say yeah. It actually captured a fair amount of the essence of the arcade title. It's not perfect. You can't expect it to be. That's where a lot of people kind of missed on that back in the day. But of course, you know, there were some games made for the 2600 that were just so bad that the expectation level was kind of maybe skewed a bit. Notably, Pac-Man. This in 1982 was outsold only by Pac-Man as far as an Atari 2600 game. Boo. Yeah, I'll cheat a little bit. The game mechanics were fairly good. The controls were okay. Like I said, it's kind of hit and miss as far as your laser beam versus your ship. Of course, your ship disappears every time you fire. You can see you barely see my ship at all. Scoring's about the same. 250 for a humanoid to safely land. 500 if you capture. Of course, the increments by 1,000, 1,500, 2,000. By doing so, the landers are 150, the bombers are 250, etc. So they kept the scoring right. The gameplay is okay, the sounds are okay, and it's just an average port for your arcade game. They could have done a lot worse, given the limitations of the hardware versus your control. I thought they did a pretty good job, to be honest. I loved it. And after returning it 3 times just to get a working version of the game for my Atari, it was absolutely worth it in the end. So, having said that, there was another Atari out there at the same time, the Atari 5200. Now, have you ever seen the Atari 5200? It's a massive system, and it had massive cartridges too. It had more memory in the hardware. It had better sound chips, better graphics than your Atari 2600's counterpart, but sometimes the game isn't necessarily better. So we're going to see how this one works out in just a second. Alrighty. Go ahead and change it out. Ah! Loud. Messing with the ears. Loud, 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 loud. Ah. And there it is. Now, Defender, it looks somewhat similar to that of the arcade game. I mean, you can tell from the ships and the smart bombs, and of course the color palette as it goes through the color scroll. And you had a numeric pad on your joystick, so therefore you can actually choose difficulty: 1 easy, 2 normal, 3 hard. And of course, if you want to play the demo, hopefully I can actually hit that. Doesn't like it. Okay. Press start button. Okay. I'm going to go through the demo. Now, the demo itself is fairly slow, I'm going to tell you right now, because it's just that. It's a demo of the game, and your ship's invulnerable, so it's just going to play the game. But as you can see, from the graphic standpoint, it's pretty darn good. It's up. And it just went right through all 3 smart bombs. AtariSoft did a lot of the home ports for the game. In fact, I even have a credit as far as the game itself. Shoot the humanoids too. There's a mutant, there's a baiter. Oh yeah. So just on the graphics and the sounds, it's a much better game. But it looks a lot slower. Well, let's go ahead and take care of that, shall we? Alright, so let's go ahead and hit the 1. We're going to play easy because I'm chicken. Hit start. Okay. Somehow I wound up on the pause screen again. Okay. Very good. So everything I just showed you was for naught. Excellent. Let's try it again. All right. And the game locked up. Well then, that's great. Never easy. There we go. My best friend from school and I used to play this game a lot. Very easily identified through that of the arcade game, just as hard as the arcade games for that matter. It even had the Starfield in the background. I dare say this is a very, very good version. It did have a tendency to slow down with a lot of things on it, I'll say that. Go ahead. Line them up there. Ah, boo. I like that starting sound a little too much, though, in my opinion, because they put on just about every bloody thing. Really? Right. Oh, I'll get you eventually. So let's be adventurous, shall we? Oh, did it lock up again? I'll play the hard version. I'll get to you. No, I won't. Oh. The baiters are already coming. That's amazing. Because I only had a few landers left. Oh well. pods, the swarmers, the irritating bombers. So yeah, gameplay is top-notch. The controls, a little sluggish versus the arcade game. But again, you have all these little things in there. You don't have a thrust button, you don't have a reverse button, you just usually use left or right in this case. Sounds are incredible compared to what we were just playing on the Atari 2600. Graphics are top. All in all, a very faithful version of Defender for your home console. The problem with this one is, though, that a lot of people didn't have a 5200. And understandably so, the thing was expensive. The games were expensive. So, yeah. But if you had one, you will rejoice in the fact that you actually have a really faithful version of an arcade game. And they did that with a number of these. They did that with Centipede, easily one of my favorite arcade ports for a home console. It sounded just like the original, played just like the original, despite the fact you didn't have a trackball. They actually have, for the 2600 version, by the way, I didn't mention this, it just occurred to me, they did have a 2600 trackball. I have one in the garage. But you could actually play Defender with the trackball, even recommended for it. And I'm thinking, who the hell would want to play Defender with a trackball? And then I played it with the trackball. Yeah, it's actually pretty cool. They made a trackball for this one. I wasn't going to spend 50 bucks on it, though. I'd rather buy a game than a peripheral for that price. It was a good times, though. But like I said, if you were fortunate to have an Atari 5200, and it was quite an advanced system, the joysticks ultimately sucked. But it was a rather cool system, and they had some really cool arcade games for it, for what it's worth. This happened to be probably, in my opinion, the best arcade port. That includes Centipede. Unlike Centipede, Atari made the game in the first place. They didn't make this game in the first place. It's just simply a conversion. But they've really paid attention to the game. It sounds like the arcade game. It looks like the arcade game. It plays like the arcade game. So just like, you know, quacks like a duck, walks like a duck, this is the duck. And it's a damn good one, too. One more. We have a lot of gameplay left. I may go over 2 hours today. If I do, I don't care. It's Saturday afternoon, damn it. Because I still got a ColecoVision version to play. Oh, they just threw everything at you here. The reason why we put both Stargate and Defender, the lack of home ports, like I said, they didn't have a large variety at the time, but also they're the same game as far as gameplay is concerned. One's slightly harder than the other, and the other is already hard. So let's switch up the machine one more time, and this time we're going to go play the ColecoVision. One of my favorite consoles, too. This is kind of the beginning of the second generation of gaming. A lot of people do put it with the first generation. It's just that it came out so many years after the Atari. Atari VCS, I believe, came out in '77. And if you had a video game prior to that, you had a Pong or a Super Pong or the Radio Shack equivalent or something. But that was that. But yeah, this was good stuff. The ColecoVision, another outstanding game console, certainly had arcade ports of the wazoo. Remember, I mentioned before in previous broadcasts that Coleco was accused of making inferior product for other consoles while making a superior product for their own. Of course that's going to be the case. They want you to buy their console so they can sell you their games. That's the way it works. Could you imagine, Sega now is a third party, but they of course were a first party when they made their own games for their own console systems. To say they made it for other systems as well. To say they made it for the Super Nintendo or the Nintendo Entertainment System. You think they would want you to play their consoles versus Sega's console? Of course not. So I love Coleco made it, and they did make some sorry ass games. I will say that Coleco. My least favorite Coleco game for the Atari is Donkey Kong Jr. If you played it, you'll understand why. It sucked. It sucked harder than a Hoover. But there it was, and if you wanted to play the game at home, you bought the game, etc., 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 and I shall hit pause. Oh, the days. I will admit, I was fortunate as a kid having multiple consoles. It was uncommon. Nowadays, you know, of course you are. There it is. Must be losing my mind. I can't find the damn thing. There it is. I can't really say I've been losing my mind. I've lost it a long time ago. Long time ago. It's one of the things about being nuts like I am. I rarely have to ever explain myself. This is a good thing sometimes. You're looking at a very, very nondescript, very, well, you know, it's Atari. I've always found it neat when the packager, the developer, whatever, has a bigger presence than the actual game title. I've always found that humorous. So much like the 5200, the ColecoVision also had a numeric pad for their game, and here they don't give you a wide variety of options. You just get press 1 for one-player game, press 2 for two-player game. No demo. Maybe we could sit here and just watch the beautiful blue screen with white text until the color goes bad on your CRT television. So let's go ahead and give it a whirl. I shall hit number 1. And let's see where this goes. Well, wow. Rather fast, I will say this. Very fast. Okay, that smart bomb is okay. Man. See, the firing mechanism goes right on through the damn thing. At least they give you 5 lives. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, man, just keep all 10 alive. Okay, well, that is a bomber, believe it or not. Yeah. That's a swarmer, I should say. Man. So here's the thing about this: the controls. If you ever played a ColecoVision, the joystick on the thing was actually a rather squat mushroom-like, if you will. It's a very flat table. It's less than an inch between it and the actual controller pad itself. Really short joystick. It was also not loose. I'm trying to avoid saying stiff. So it was hard to maneuver, and when you have a game that moves as quickly as that, it really makes it difficult to navigate the game. So let's go ahead and give it another whirl, shall we? Oh my goodness. Okay, humanoids in danger. I'm moving there as quickly as I can. And you see the ship moves really slow. Graphics are actually pretty good there. Very faithful to that of the arcade game, of course, with the mountains and everything like that. The scanner there at the top of the screen. But the controls, fortunately, are clunky. And you know what? I'm just going to fly over there eventually. After all, I have 5 smart bombs. I had 5 smart. It's a tough game. It really is. I'll say this: Defender itself is a tough game. If it were too easy, I'd be a little disappointed at that. And I think that's one of the disappointments with the Atari 2600 version. It was quite easy, in compared to the arcade game and certainly the other ports. But this console version is dubiously difficult, largely because the control sucks. And for as much as I'm firing here, your fire beam is barely on the screen. I'm not moving until I actually reach the end of the screen. That's irritating. That's irritating as hell. So it kind of misses on that mark. Okay. Kill the humanoid. Good at that. I should have been... that should... Nope. One lousy lander left. Okay. 9 humanoids, 900 points. You know what I'm going to do on this next one? I'm going to go all scorched. Okay, you can go back to this menu, please. Thank you. I don't like them anyway. To be successful, you should add more than 10 of you. Now the planet is destroyed. Now I have nothing but really irritating and slow mutants. No humanoids to work with, and therefore I will have swarms and I will have bombers. But I won't have any landers. There's nothing for the landers to do, so all mutants all the way. It makes it a much more difficult game, of course, to play that way. But sometimes I'll just do that just so I can get some points. Another minor irritation. Okay, there's a Vader there. Okay, I don't know where the Vader went. I guess the Vader is sort of following me, but doing a really lousy job at it. This should not be a thing. There's Vader. So this one is mildly painful to play, I will say. Atari Soft did a good job on their own consoles, but not so much on this console. Although it is better than, graphically and sound-wise to their own 2600 counterpart, but certainly not to their 5200 counterpart. 5200 counterpart is damn near perfect. This one wasn't. But if you had a ColecoVision, let's say you had a ColecoVision and the 2600, which was, possible back in those days, I did. Yeah, sure. Get the ColecoVision. But I didn't mind the 2600 version at all. Ian, how you doing? Hi. Welcome to the channel. You're seeing here I'm getting destroyed here on a little game called Defender for the ColecoVision. We're doing comparisons right now to the arcade game Defender and its sequel. Oh, it's quite retro. I'm about as retro as they come these days, I'm afraid. I've been playing games for over 45 years, so I go back to the first generation of gaming. Yeah, I've been called worse. Good lord. I got started with a little thing called a Super Pong. That was from Atari. It was a battery operated. Wasn't even really a console. It was a handheld, if you want to call it that. You plugged it into your TV and you played Pong and some variants of it. And I was just a kid then. Pro retro gamer here. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. That's pretty much it. On the Saturday stream, we play an arcade game and take their home console versions and kind of stack them up against them and see how they work. This one in particular, this is Defender for the ColecoVision, which came out, I believe, in 1982. And while the Atari versions that they made were actually pretty decent, ColecoVision is painful. We'll play one more time. But I appreciate you stopping by. This is not an educational thing whatsoever. It's just me having a midlife crisis. And I worked for a video game retailer for about 10 years. My brother is still in the business. He is a tech manager at one of those large arcades, restaurant combinations where people, have a few drinks and then they make fools of themselves with the arcade games that are in there. And he's been doing that for about 20 years now. And he and I go back to the days where there were no download games, there were no in-game purchases or any of that crap. We just played games. And it was a different era then too. These games were designed for you will die, you will end the game, you will lose. They didn't have real conclusions back in those days. You just tried to better your score. And this game is not going to be one of those because this is not a very good version. I'm not going to play one more time. No, I don't want to. Bad, boo, hiss, blank screen and everything. Ugh. Anyway. I'll show you this though. This picture here, this was taken back in, I dare say, the mid-1990s. And all those boxes that are surrounding the Pac-Man cabinet, which I converted the Nintendo Entertainment System into, those were the games that I bought back in those days. And it extended literally throughout the entire room. So, yeah, I kind of go back a few years. Not so much on the computer days, but certainly on the consoles. And back in those days, I had the Atari VCS, which is 2600, the Atari 5200, the ColecoVision, an Intellivision, the GCE Vectrex, which is pretty cool because it actually had its own monitor. The Nintendo Entertainment System, the Sega Master System, the Sega Genesis, the Sega Saturn, the Sony PlayStation, the Panasonic 3DO, the Magnavox CDI. I kind of stopped with the PlayStation 3, largely because, well, I grew up more or less, wife, kids, things. But the kids now play the games. My daughter has a PlayStation 4, which she absolutely loves. Doesn't find a reason yet to get a PlayStation 5. My son has a Nintendo Switch, and they've rated my video game collection because I do have over 1,000 games for them to play with. On the PlayStation and up, they're more or less interested. Anything like what I was just playing now, forget it. Yeah, they're gamers too. My wife plays a few of these as well. In fact, she can kick my ass in a few games. Hey, Straxmaster, how you doing? Straxmaster 5, thank you. Thanks for popping in. I appreciate it. I was just telling Yeen here what an old fart I am as far as video games. I've been playing since 1976 as a gamer, and that's it's a good thing and it's a bad thing. When you're a kid, of course, you don't have a job, so you have an allowance or whatever, and of course you earn to play those games. Back in those days, the Atari games cost about maybe $20 to $30, depending on the title. And in this case here, we're playing an arcade game, which is Defender, and its sequel Stargate. And we're looking at the home versions for it, and we kind of compare and contrast. Of course, the console games are not going to be as intricate as the arcade game, particularly in this game, because Defender had like 7 controls on its control panel. A joystick where you move up and down, a thrust, a reverse, a hyperspace, a fire, and a smart bomb, as opposed to one joystick and one button. But we got to play around with that, and it's a fun thing. And it was easy in those days because the games themselves were designed for you to lose. You just simply ran out of lives or patience, whichever. In my case, it would be patience. But I was playing, Ms. Pac-Man and Galaga, and of course Pac-Man Space Invaders when they premiered back in the 70s and 80s. So here I am now. I'll be 50 next month. So yeah, midlife crisis. That's me. Let's switch up the console real quickly. Now we're going to go into Stargate territory. We're going to go back to the Atari 2600. Oh my God, yes. The Atari 2600, they kind of fell victim to the game crash. In fact, it kind of was responsible for the video game crash back in 1983. And by the way, there's a fantastic book, because my brain will just simply jump all over the place. Thank you, appreciate it. Yep, I'll be half a century old. Woohoo! I've never thought about how old I am, largely because I've been told I don't look as old as I am, and I don't care. What if I say there is a fantastic book by a gentleman by the name of Stephen L. Kent? Almost there too. Well, there you go. Like I got started young. My dad's best friend, or one of his best friends, was a video game dealer. And this is back before you could go to a store and find a video game on a shelf any time of the year and pick it up and buy it, whatever. So sometimes you have to order from the catalog, or you have to go with a dealer. Strange times. So we got a Super Pong off of him, and then about a year later we got my first Atari. And it came with a game called Combat, which essentially was the arcade game Tank, with a few extra games thrown in there. And we'd actually sit there and play it, and it just became a thing. It was unusual for kids my age to have more than one system, however, and I did wind up getting that because I really got involved and wanted to play this stupid thing. So, hey. I don't want to deafen anyone because this game, I'm afraid, is a bit loud. But at the same time, I don't want to make it too soft because that's just the way it is. And can I pause that? Nope, it's just not. It's just going to sit there. Okay. Turn it down just a teensy tad. Tank is a fun game. It is. You got to remember, Atari started a lot of this stuff, and they had to keep you entertained. and they did a very good job. And on Steam, they just threw out a few months ago the Atari 50th Anniversary Collection. And it ranges games from the arcade games all the way up through the last system that they produced, which was the Atari Jaguar in the mid-1990s. And everything in between. Now, they made other games for the system, like this game here, Stargate. It's not going to appear in that collection because they didn't create Stargate. Williams did. But they have like games like Yar's Revenge, Asteroids, Breakout, of course, Pong, Crystal Castle, Centipede, and all them. So they have a good amount of games for you to play. But it is really neat to go back and see what the games were about back in those days, and watch them fly by the seat of their pants because they had absolutely no idea what the hell they were doing back in those days. There really wasn't quality control, which ultimately led to the video game crash in 1983, thanks to a little game called E.T. And while it's not the worst game, in my opinion, it is the most disappointing game. And I wound up with 3 of those things one Christmas because my mom, my grandmother, and my best friend gave me that game for Christmas. Of course, there's no communication between the 3 of them, and I wound up with 3 copies of the game, and I kept all 3. It was the greatest game then, but it sucked. Anyway, if you go on Amazon, you can find there's the Ultimate History of Video Games from Stephen L. Kent. There's a few editions of that game because of the years, new systems come out, new advances, and all that kind of crap. Check it out. Best Christmas gift that it was, actually. I'm not going to go into chapter and verse about what all entailed, but it was the biggest hyped game of 1982, 83, that particular season. And Atari spent a lot of money on licensing, but they also made sure everybody and their mom knew that E.T. the video game is coming to you soon. But when you took Howard Warshaw was the developer of that particular game. He had great success with Yar's Revenge a couple of years prior to that. And they gave him ultimately 6 weeks from conception to... Or you fall a lot in the video game and it was like, oh God. I made a video of that on Twitch when I first got started on Twitch. I've only been doing this for the last couple of months. It's not even on my YouTube backup page because it sucked that badly. And I fell, and I fell, and I fell, and I got captured by the FBI agent. I got captured by the doctor who took me to the building. Elliot maybe helped. So, but yeah, Howard Warshaw developed the game and ultimately went out on the shelf a grand total of 6 weeks, which is impossible, even by those days. And they made more cartridges of that game than they actually had systems to play that game, which is kind of stupid. It's a unique strategy to sell every copy. So, there's that. That's another chapter for another day. When I do on Monday streams, I will do all games have something in common. It might be a suckage day, and ET might be in there. And Wednesdays, I'm playing an action RPG from yesteryear, before RPGs were even popular. And this one came from a company called SNK. They were known for their Neo Geo console back in the 90s. And the game is called Crystallis. They made this back in 1990. So it's a 32-year-old RPG. Now, I'm going to hit pause in just a second. Stay right there. My dogs behind me want to leave the room. And I'm not going to say no. So I'll be right back, okay? After I hit pause. I love my doggies. I wonder they put pictures up on them. I have two of the most gorgeous dogs. I've been a dog owner all my life. Currently I have a German Shepherd. She's only about 2 years old. Her name is Macy. And I have a Rhodesian Ridgeback Blackmouth Cur mix. And his name is Dusty. And I think he's about 11 now. We're not really sure how old he is. They're both rescue pets. That's just the best way to do it, in my opinion, but that's me. Okay, where was I? Trying to get the game back up. Still wants the ColecoVision. Not going to have the ColecoVision. The ColecoVision is done. Kaput. Gone. Bye. Boo. Hiss. Stargate. Stargate was later renamed Defender 2 for licensing reasons. The game itself is just simply a harder version of Defender. And if you've ever played Macy and Dusty, that's close enough. M-A-C-Y and Dusty, yeah. Like the department store in North America, Macy. They're wonderful dogs. Like I said, I've been a dog lover my entire life, and German Shepherd is my favorite breed. I love hound dogs too, so have one of each. And they are pretty much they're part of the happiness of my life, as it is. Okay, so having said that, Stargate, a harder Defender. And if you've seen it in the arcades, yeah, it has more buttons than a clothing factory. But again, you have a home console version with one button and one joystick. Now, in this game, you could use the second joystick as your smart bomb and your hyperspace and your Inviso. I don't have a second joystick, so we're going to have to wing it with just the one. And as you can see, Stargate is just a flashing, colorful word that just sits there perpetually until you actually hit a fire button, like this. Okay. The controls are a bit sluggish versus the Atari Defender they made a few years before this, because this was made in '84. But the graphics pretty much are on par, believe it or not, with the arcade original. There's a Stargate there. Oops. And they are just going crazy here. Now if I catch 4 of these, which I'm going to do right, I'm going to advance 3 levels, get an extra life, get some more smart bombs, and watch me self-destruct because the game's going to get that much harder all of a sudden. And that's the purpose of the Stargate. Stargate will take you to a humanoid that's in danger, and there happen to be more than one, it will take you to whichever is closer. And also you can advance in the game, or you can just crash into the ship and die. Here are the pods with the swarmers. Make your life absolutely hell. This is, I'm going to say this is not an easy game. It was never an easy game. It is a hard as hell game. And for the masochists of us gamers back in the 1980s, it's just, can you, how much can you endure? Oh, it survived. Amazing. Thank you. Oh, and the Freds and the Munchies are coming out. Yes, those are actual aliens in this particular game. Because I wait too long. Oh, there's the firebomber. Okay. There's the baiter. Okay, what do I have left? I guess the baiter is now my only alien left? Yep. No, okay. I have a pod there. There you go. Alright. Woo! I have all that smart bomb, all that Inviso, and I can't use it because I don't have a second joystick. Ah! But I'm the kind of kid that would play Ms. Pac-Man and not rely on the Energizers, but just to run up a score like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0 or something like that. And you did that because eventually you learned the game mechanics, and you discover you can do just about anything you want to in the game. And that's how we played back in those days. Yeah, there were some Easter eggs you might wind up discovering from time to time, but other than that, there's a space guppy. That is my mother-in-law's Shih Tzu. Wonderful creature. His name is Gabby. Shot the humanoid. I got this? I don't know about that. Yep, and bye-bye. Dead human. Almost got an extra life there. Alright. Hard game. And this is the Atari 2600. Remember, this is like the console everybody had back in those days. It was a good time. This was an excellent port. The controls are a little bit sluggish, but nevertheless, for its graphics, sounds, the gameplay itself, it was top notch. So we'll do one more game. Wait, yes, there's more. Got 2 more of these suckers to go through. Because Atari had more than one console. Even in those days, they had the Atari 5200 as well. And it was a much more expensive, but much more advanced Atari than the 2600. It was the first analog joystick, multi-button. You actually had a numeric pad, start, reset, pause even. You can actually pause your games, which was not a thing back in those days. Oh, very good. And I killed the humanoid, because I suck. What do I have left here? I guess I have... I lost 3 humanoids. Wow, okay. Good job. Like I said, you can do well in one game, and you can bite it in another game. It's just that kind of a game. The skill level of this game is quite difficult. And rightly so. Like I said, if you ever play the arcade game, you have your left-handed joystick, and you have buttons also on the left hand for you to mess around with, like thrust, and reverse, and fire, and smart bomb, and inviso, and hyperspace. And they're all separate controls in the game versus something like this. Okay, that works. Should I dare play one more just because? Yeah, sure. Why not? It's Saturday after all. I'm not working. I have the day off. And everybody's happy. I just fly right between them there. There you go. So, one little neat thing about this game, we're going to do it. Humanoids, no problem. Let's get rid of the humanoids. And to get shot. Okay, there you go. So the planet self-destructs, now you're dealing with nothing but mutants. Absolutely. Saturday is always a game day. I was lucky to live near an arcade. Where I used to live, there was a big, super big, big arcade called Grand Prix Racer-Rama. And it was one time the largest arcade in North America. It had over 1,000 games. And I could ride my bike to it. Wasn't always a great idea, because it was I live in a massive metropolitan area where, speed limits are mere suggestions, and you haven't run the red line until about 5th or 6th. But I'd go in there and play. How many lives do you have in this game? You start off with 3. There are no options to, unlike in the arcade game where you can flip dip switches to give you more lives. Here it's default 3. You earn a new life after 10,000 points. You also earn a smart bomb and some extra inviso time. But I noticed that the ColecoVision, they gave you 5 lives. They were quite generous, but the game sucked. So it's just 2 extra lives to torture you as opposed to 3. It's a good game. I was very impressed when I got this for the Atari back in the day. Because it just was that much closer to the arcade game than that. I'll switch back here real quickly. Oh, short. You noticed that the first game was quite long. Yes, but then I did a thing. Remember, I captured 4 humanoids from the landers and flew into the Stargate. Well, that gave me a whole crapload of points and also threw me 3 levels into the future. Versus just getting shot at and ramming into aliens here and killing everything and dying. Memories. Let's see. Where are you? I'm going to fumble around here. I'm going to take you back to the arcade game. Real quickly. Since I can find where the hell there it is. Okay. It's going to be a little loud, so you'll have to forgive me on this. All right. We're going to use a Sega Genesis emulator because it itself is an emulated game. And why not? You could do that then, you can do that now. And this was, I believe, released in 1996. And one day will actually allow me to go through all this. But not today. Okay. Defender 2. This is the arcade game. Yeah, they just appear right in front of you. I've always loved the volcano in the background. Touch. Really? Hard game. I gave myself 5 lives. I've already burned through 2 of them. Good job. Game mechanics, they will do anything they can to get out of your line of sight, out of your line of fire. They do a good job of it, too. All landers are destroyed, so therefore I just have to firebomb this stuff. And they're pain in the ass because they'll go up and down, so therefore, get out of here, Fred. Yes, that is Fred. There is an alien in this game named Fred. Because why not? You could have called him Albert. So when you just saw the 2600 version do a fairly good job of balancing out that game versus this arcade version, yeah, I think they did a good job. And considering the Atari 2600 was not the powerful system at all. Remember, the games themselves were like 1K to 5K games. Sometimes you might luck out with a 10K game like Pitfall 2. But no. The Atari 5200, like I said, was the more advanced Atari of the day. And it had a pretty good defender, as we saw earlier in the broadcast, but they made Stargate for it, but it never went into production, but the prototype does exist. And it did get put into emulation, and we will take a look at it right now. After all, they did a masterful version of Defender. You think they'd do the same thing with Stargate? After all, why not? As you can see, it's quite colorful, almost Christmas colorful. Here's its demo. My, that's loud. A little slow though, isn't it? Oh yeah, this is what you saw in the Atari 2600 version. Oh, it's much slower. Let the pain begin. Number of players, 1. Number of ships, 3 just torture ourselves. The pain. Oh man, are you gonna go down or what? Even the controls are sluggish. Master difficulty control. This is very similar to that of the arcade. By the way, screen options. You could do that in the arcade game. You can do that here as well. So I'm giving myself 5 lives because why not? Okay. And slowly launch off. There's Fire Bomber. Destroying the landers. Oh my goodness. I didn't even hear him. 500 points for that, but I blew up. And they just come right at you. Certainly colorful. Sounds good. Here's the Stargate flying to that. Now halfway around the world. You can see the humanoids are walking. They're happy little dudes. Minding their own business, being attacked by landers, being turned into mutants. What could possibly go wrong? Oh, I thought I caught him. Oopsie. Never did like him anyway. Ah. Colorful. And all over the place. I tell you, it does get busy. It gets super busy in this. And that's what's kind of painful here. It slows down everything. The controls are sluggish. The graphics are good, the sounds are fantastic, but the gameplay is what's key on this one. And here at the demo mode, of course, they're throwing everything at the game, and the game is literally crawling like a snail. I don't mind it so much, but it does turn painful after a while. Are you even trying? Of course not. Why you're a demo? So now you gotta make it. Okay. And you shoot at humanoids. So it's like if I were playing. What an idea. Why not? Don't like you anyway, so bye-bye, humans. Let that one turn to a mutant on its own. Don't care. Bye-bye. Y'all suck. Oh my goodness. Happy New Year. Now they're all mutants. And slow. Okay. Oh, they come and fire at you and everything. Say this, it is faithful. Oh, the game? Yeah, it does. I managed to fly right through the ship. I'm not going to argue that one. Fine by me. Sure, fly right through it. There you go. Okay, those are Illigan space guppies. It's sad that I actually know the name of these effing things. Well, I haven't looked any of this up. And good God. Yeah. So, the first wave seemed pretty easy in comparison to the subsequent waves. That's because it was easy in comparison. So let's stack up the game then. Pause it as soon as it turned black, of course. Stack up the game then. Graphics are really good. I'll give them that. Sounds are excellent. Atari 5200 had some killer sound chips in it. If you want to look up, you can find emulators all over the internet and stuff like that. You can certainly find one for 5200. Lucasfilm, believe it or not, they made a series of games back in the day. Lucas games, and one of the games was Ball Blazer. And you want to see what a really good, masterful sound programming he's done. Look at the game. They also made it for the Atari 7800, and it was exactly the same as far as sound was concerned. They don't have the same sound chips at all. 7800 is just a glorified 2600 as far as the sound department. It's the programming. But the 5200 had it naturally. Even had a speech synthesizer. The game Berserk from Stern Electronics was one of the first talkie games of the era, made back in 1980, and the 5200 version actually spoke to you. So it was made back in 1982, that particular version. So it had some advancements then. It just had a sucky controller. Graphics, like I said, is good. Control's a little sloppy, and the speed is really slow. So it's kind of gets some mixed on here. Does it stand up to the arcade game? Mostly, yes. Would I want to have it as something to play around at home? Yeah, I say so. Now the average 2600 game back in those days cost about $30, but the 5200 games cost about $40. So is it worth the $10 to spend when you saw those two versions side by side? Probably not. I probably would stick with the 2600 version. I get the second controller so I can do all the extra doodads in the game, like the smart bomb, the inviso, and the hyperspace. But as on its own, it was quite good. All these versions that you just saw, the arcade versions were done by Williams Electronics, who were known chiefly for pinball tables back in the day. And they got their first arcade game out with Defender. And it was, again, by Eugene Jarvis. What a debut. Masterful, colorful, outstanding games. They had some of the best sounds in pinball and in arcade games. You can always tell when it was a Williams project. Atari did a very good job simulating all this. Atari Soft made it for the ColecoVision and, of course, all their home consoles. But now we're going to find one that was not made by Atari. This was made by HAL America. HAL America is a second party to Nintendo. They still exist to this day. They've made, I believe, the Mario Party games, if I'm not mistaken. Either that or no, actually, I take it back. That was Hudson Soft. They make the Smash Brothers series, and they're lunatics. I love them. Nintendo Entertainment System. The Famicom, known elsewhere in the world, pretty much brought back video games to the home. And they did a damn good job of that. Now, I mentioned this in the history before, but as far as the history of this particular unit, Nintendo actually went to Atari. Remember them? We were just looking at their product just now. Went to Atari and said, "Hey, we're going to try to get video games back in people's homes. Would you make it for us?" And Atari said, "No, absolutely not. We're done. Finished. Screw you." I don't know if they actually said that, but yeah. So Nintendo went to the New York area, and they literally sold it on the streets. They redesigned it. Doesn't look anything like the Famicom, that's for sure. They made it look like the average VCR in North America back in the mid-1980s. You lift open the door, you slide the thing in, press it down, clunk, turn it on, and have fun. They didn't call it a video game console. They called it an entertainment system. Again, video games had a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. It crashed. The whole damn industry crashed. And so they brought it back. They did it the hard way. They did a great job of it, too. I'm scrolling down. Went right on past its Defender 2, stupid. Pause that for a second. You hear the tense and very intense and gripping music for this, because it sounds just like the original game or something. What's amazing, Atari still had a license to Defender all this time, and to this very day, you will find Atari's credit on Williams' game, because Atari has helped pretty much put Williams' game into the home. Okay, let me turn this down, just to keep the annoyance down. So, you have a brand new system, the Nintendo Entertainment System. Put out Super Mario Brothers, and they took a lot of their Versus arcade games like Excite Bike, Mario Brothers, Donkey Kong, Hogan's Alley, Duck Hunt. They were all arcade games, believe it or not. and they brought them successfully to the home, and we loved them. And then a few years later, everyone started making their games out. Now, this came out in 1988 from HAL America. Again, I love them. They made some excellent games, even back in the day. This ain't one of them. Let's find out why I don't like it. A lot of it has to do with what you're hearing right now. Okay, now they used that music for a number of their games back in the day as well. They use it for Joust. If you saw last week's Arcade versus Console, you got the same music. Popeye, yeah. Nintendo of America actually made Popeye. That was an arcade game as well. It was one of the few high-res games of the day. It does have a Popeye sound, at least the tempo and the arrangement of the music. But you got to remember, Defender didn't have any music. It had a big sound at the beginning. So let's go for accuracy, shall we? Accidentally hit the smart bomb first because I'm stupid. Well, it certainly is busy. Very short on the. Gameplay is decent. Okay, what the hell's left? Oh. I think that when they made this, they were hoping that people actually wouldn't remember the game. And you gotta remember, it was called Stargate in the arcades. It got renamed to Defender 2, largely for licensing purposes. They wanted to make sure they could keep the trademark on the game, because Stargate, remember, there was something else out there, Stargate-wise, namely a book, later a movie. Almost flew right into it. Now, I will say this, the controls are super smooth, despite the fact that you're using a D-pad. Sounds suck. Music sucks. Your typical Nintendo sound fare, if you will. And we want to really look at how bad Nintendo sounds can possibly be in a game. I'll go back to my YouTube page and look up the Ms. Pac-Man Arcade vs. Console. The very last one, strangely enough, was Namco. And although Namco did not create Ms. Pac-Man, it was actually created by a bunch of ex-MIT students, believe it or not. It sucked. And that's one game I do know. Been playing it since it debuted. Sadly. B, as opposed to A, is a harder game than A. A was pretty hard. Let's see how bad B can be. Let's just hit the wrong button again. Yes, using my smart bombs like they were everyday things. That's when you use a smart bomb. Okay. You're the one that's left. Okay. I don't want to shoot people. Not yet. You're probably asking yourself, why didn't I drop the humanoid back to the planet? Largely because I didn't have the opportunity to do so, because they didn't know what they were doing. No extra life. I think that was at 20,000 in this game. Because they could. It's just, will you ever make it to 20,000? Chances are the answer will be no. We'll do one more. So you threw away your Atari, you got rid of it, it sucked, video games sucked, and now you got a Nintendo Entertainment System. and you want a game from yesteryear, and this is your opportunity to get that game. Oh, there you go. Does it stack up to the arcade game? Yeah, it does. Gameplay is pretty solid. Kind of messed up a few things here. That's annoying. No, it's not supposed to do that, but again, you don't have your system anymore, so now you have a Nintendo. So you get to be annoyed with that. I was about to say, there's something left. Yes, okay. So, does it stack up to the arcade game? Yeah, more or less it does. Like I said, it's just, for me, the big detractor is the sound. It's just, I know the Nintendo Entertainment System can do pretty good sounds. This is just not one of the examples of doing so. What really stinks is that they could have easily made a better version of this. And we've seen other examples from Nintendo as well. The Pac-Man that Namco made, ultimately Tengen brought out. Oh, please. Oh, shoot me now. Imagine that on your console. Anyway. It did the job. It was okay. I liked it. But it's disappointing that you have a console that can actually do this, can do it right, and they didn't. In Japan, for the Famicom, they did release Stargate as the title Stargate, and it actually looks more like Stargate, like what we saw in the arcades. We're not going to play that. We'll just take my word for it. It could have actually just left it alone. Left it like that. Unfortunately, it still had the same music. It was still done by HAL America. But for whatever reason, they changed the graphics for North America users. I guess to differentiate that between, the yesteryear, versus that today. I don't know. I don't care. There are a lot of good home versions of it, and most of them are good. I think the worst one of this bunch was the ColecoVision, which is kind of disappointing in the fact that back in that particular generation, which is the beginning of the second generation of video games, the ColecoVision did a lot more, but Atari Soft wanted you to buy their 5200 version. And I think that's the reason why they did that. That's just my opinion. I had them both. I did get the 5200 version. I did not get the ColecoVision version, to be fair. So they succeeded in that at least. Well, I hate to say this, that pretty much wraps it up. That's the last game I have here on my agenda. So we're going to pretty much call it right here. Thank you for watching, Yeen and Shaxmaster 5. I greatly appreciate that. Meister 5, excuse me. Yes, Meister 5. I gotta get a new prescription, I think. Like I said, next month I'll turn the big old 50. I appreciate you watching. Thank you. If you like what you see, if other viewers out there, if you happen to catch the VOD, give me a follow. I greatly would appreciate it. Thank you, Steve. It was very informative. Yeah, thank you. What date next month? The end of the month, 28th. So, I will officially fall. In North America, we have the 18 to 49 demographic. I will officially fall out of that. Yes, 28th. That's a short month. It's kind of a mixed thing for me. Like I said, I don't really do big on birthdays here, but like I said, this is one of the milestone birthdays, so what the hell. I'll have to run with it. Why not? Don't forget, I have a YouTube page with all my past crap that I've been doing here, so you can see some of the other junk. Played a couple RPGs, Utopia, and continue on with Crystallis. We have theme games in there as well. We had the Capcom Hard from last Monday. That will be up on there soon. I also have my original YouTube page back in North America. In the 70s, there was a game called The Match Game. And I did a tribute channel to them back in the very, very early days of YouTube. And I haven't updated that sucker in about 10 years, so for what it's worth. I also have an Instagram link down there, too. You can catch some of the stuff that I've collected over the years. And that's a lot of years of crap that I've collected, video game-wise. Some of it was from work, some of it was from my childhood. But it's there nonetheless. Check it out. I'll see you again on Monday evening, 7 p.m. We're going to do a How Hard Was It once again. And also sometime in this month, my wife will appear. And for the new segment, Can My Wife Play It? She does a pretty good job. Like I said, there's a couple of puzzle games that she's really, really good at. And she can knock me out of the park for that one. So there's that. I will see you again. Thanks for watching. I'm Super Pac. I'm signing out.